Joe Parisi, County Executive, and my help with coordinating this, Sarah, Olivia, and Adelia, who have been part of DABL for the past year. And Sarah's been with us for now 4 years, I believe. So this year is really another step towards building the paradigm for helping individual artists become better at what they do. We always are told, you know, follow what you want to do the best you can do at that career, and eventually someone's going to pay you for it. And I have 3 artists with me tonight that have proven that that's the case. We have T.L. Luke, who is a prolific illustrator, often working with work that's about the girl, the lone girl, often associated with animal connotations, but really challenging, incredibly creative work that she does as an illustrator, often reflecting life today. So I'm really thrilled to have T.L. Luke with us. Check out her website, tl-luke.com, for any of her merchandise as well as any commissions. And she's one of the hardest working artists that I've known since I've met her in the past several years. We're also lucky to have with us Aaron Law, who is a wood maker, wood crafter, wood artist, and artist. I've seen and worked with Aaron a lot. Here's my little private story that I'm going to embarrass Aaron about. When we did a project one time, I needed some help moving a large stage, wood stage, in the late fall. It was a very heavy stage. I asked Aaron to help me. I'm dressed in goggles, a hat, sweatshirt, gloves, pants, boots, you know, waiting for Aaron to show up because we had to move this large stage in a cold, cold fall. How does Aaron show up? As any wood maker I know and love, t-shirt, shorts, and flip-flops. He said, let's go. That's Aaron Law, amazing artist, does incredibly creative work. And of course, Mark Weller, who does time-lapse photography. Love Mark. Mark was at one time CEO, president of Access Wisconsin, a cable network that provided fiber optics to communities around the state. He retired a few years ago, and he has a prolific body of work, incredible work. And I know Aaron and Mark work together at times, but Mark has been an amazing photographer. Here's what Mark says: while traditional photography generally captures 3 dimensions, my images explore the 4th dimension, time, which is why we often refer to Mark privately as Mark Twilight Zone Weller. So that's a little bit of who we have with us, some pretty outstanding artists. And of course, one of the first questions I pose to them is, do you all consider yourself small business owners? Mark, yes. TL, Aaron, it was a unanimous yes. And that's the part of what we're trying to do with DABL, trying to help artists better understand the framework of running as a business. But none of us has ever faced a pandemic, you know, and hopefully we will never face one again. Heck, we're never going to get out of this one with all the COVIDiots, but we are in a pandemic. And I want to know from Mark and then TL and Aaron, how has this pandemic shaped your art?
I'll go first. You know, everything changed. In January of 2020, I had booked shows for the entire year, and it was the first time that's ever happened. So I had very high hopes that this would be the most successful year that I would have. It looked very promising in January. By March, every single thing that I had going canceled. And I remember talking to one of my clients, trying to make a sale. And the guy looked at me and he said, for God's sakes, I can't buy any art. We're down, our revenues are down 60%. And that was a stake in my heart that traditional buyers were just not going to buy. The flip side is, by the time the year was over, I had booked 12 shows and 3 art museums. So it was all different, but it didn't die. And you got to hustle to make things happen that are good for you.
Great, thanks, Mark. TL?
So similarly to Mark, when at the beginning of the year, I booked a children's book deal. I had a board game deal coming up, like a lot of like really like dream projects for an illustrator. And I had about 45 markets scheduled just for like February to like June, or to February to like September. And all of those very quickly in March was like, oh, my market next week got canceled. Oh, my market next month got canceled. And then just, as we all know, the sweep of every market going like, okay, that was like 60% of my revenue for 2019. Like, what am I gonna do? Okay. So yeah, similarly in 2020, that was like, with everybody, we all had to make a big shift. And so my shift was moving to pretty much 100% commissions. And I ended up doing like 84 commissions in 2020 and came out a little ahead of 2019, which is a freaking miracle, but it required a lot of sitting down going like, okay, this isn't going away, what's next? And 2020 also allowed for a lot of time to do really cool projects, like with Underbelly, how we did the What's the Future video game like event, and all of these things that maybe would never have happened if we weren't kind of in like, oh, we all have to be creative right now about how we're going to do events moving forward, how we're going to make money, and that kind of thing. So that's where my 2020 was.
Aaron, did you find yourself in a similar situation, I guess?
Yeah, I got really lucky because I had already shifted most of my business online. And so when the pandemic hit, I had, I only lost a couple of in-person events, and there was actually an upsurge in online sales during the pandemic. So it kind of evened out for me. And that was just, like I said, luck, because I had already been shifting my business away from more in-person things. So that was my experience. I had also, I have multiple avenues of sale besides, direct sales, and, like commissions are huge for me too. So I had several projects that were like, multi-year projects that I'm still finishing that were booked before the pandemic. And so yeah, my business has just, honestly, it's stayed kind of steady, like it was moving along, but there was a shift, definitely. And now almost everything is online.
Did you find that the pandemic, either the three of you can answer this, did you find that the pandemic forced you to shift, but you were in a position to do so because you have already been aligning your business accordingly to how to manage, as you said, Aaron, definite multiple revenue lines or streams in which you could advance your work? So you perhaps eliminated one line and went to another. But who does this work? Who manages your art? Who sits with you and says, okay, you need to administer this, you need to make these kind of calls, you need to make this work? Is it each of you on your own, or do you have a manager?
I do not have a manager. It's you're looking at the entire workforce right in front of you. It's just me. I shouldn't say that. I do have a guy who helps with the marketing, and I pay him. It's a service I picked up. To me, the pivot came, and Aaron, you're lucky that you had thought this through ahead of time. The shift to online was pretty dramatic, and I can say a lot of bad things about the pandemic, but for me, at least, one good thing was it forced me to look broader. And I always had the attitude, my art sells generally in the Low end is $900, up to about 2,500. And I kind of had talked myself into, no one's going to buy a $2,500 piece of art unless they can touch it and feel it and smell it and talk to me and think about it. And then come back another day and look at it again, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which does not bode well for online sales. However, I was surprised. I've sold probably more online this year than ever before. And not only am I in the pandemic world, but so are the buyers. So maybe they're not as comfortable, but if they're going to buy art, online is a pretty reasonable alternative for them to do. And it'll be interesting to see how much going forward, how much of that will remain, or whether we'll slide back to more purchases, face-to-face kind of stuff. The other thing I noticed that I thought was really quite beneficial to artists, especially guys like me, is just the galleries going online. And the mechanics of that can be very, very expensive in the old world. If you applied for a call and got in, and if the gallery is 5-10 states away, it is very expensive to ship art, especially the size that I do, which is generally 60 or 38 by 60. That's several $100 one way, and then several $100 coming back if it doesn't sell. But with galleries going online, that was a real boon to me, in terms of the only thing I had to do is, fill out the forms and, take my chances. Usually there's a pretty modest, $30, $35 entry fee. And all the shipping expenses go away because I just have to send them a high quality JPEG, and they handle the rest of that. So
it did seem as if the shift in the pandemic forced you all to think differently about your work. But still, there were some very bright spots about getting that word out about selling and generating revenues for your sales. But TL, Aaron, do you manage your work on your own? Do you work with a partner? I mean, how do you go? What's the process for you managing your work, TL or Aaron?
I can go. So I am my own boss. So I manage myself, but I am also very much pro speaking with your community and speaking with fellow business owners. So where I was alone technically at the start of the pandemic, but I cannot say that I just all by myself thought of the winning strategy to exist this year. It definitely was sitting down with small business owners that are not artists and have their own brick and mortars, and kind of sitting down with them and going what are your strategies? Maybe we have similar ones, or fellow artists, and kind of discussing okay, is it worth doing virtual markets? Is it worth, have you heard of this program that they're willing to sell, wholesale for you? No, I wouldn't do that. It was all about communicating with this amazing community and brainstorming collectively, because I don't know, this can be a very isolating career being an artist, and it can be really, really very stressful when you're looking at it purely from I am the only one that can handle this situation, and forgetting that oh wait, no, we're isolated in our own thing, but we are still a community that can share resources and assist each other. So all of my, I could list a million things that I have changed this year, and between social media and passive income and getting into wholesale versus just, doing individual online sales or what have you, went down so many different avenues, and all of that is because of the open communication that I thankfully have had in this community. So.
Well, that's a wonderful example, because I often say there's something interesting about literary artists and visual artists. They're really about the work and the paper. It's not so much wanting to be out into gatherings with others and discussing the work that you do as a collective, but I encourage individual artists, particularly literary and visual artists, to get out and meet others who are like you, because you'll find that when you come together, you face a lot of the same issues. And maybe, and as you're doing, DL, having community engagement, you're answering some of the questions from others that you're asking yourself all the time in your head when you're alone in your studio. So that's a great example of the value of community work. And Aaron, so, oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was like, if I could just say one last thing about that is, it is so important that if we elevate each other, we can charge more for things. We can be kind of our own informal union when we're all kind of like, no, we all know what our new standard is. And the standard that we have right now is a little too low. Like, we need to lift each other. And so it's important for that.
And Aaron, do you manage yourself? Do you have someone that handles all your accounts and your receivables and your budget and marketing?
Yeah, well, first of all, I agree with TL about the community support and the giving and the receiving of the support to our colleagues. It's really essential, and it's necessary to stay sane, as the sole proprietor, artist, business owner. And so, yeah, I resonate with that. I I think the dirty little secret is that if you're an artist running an art business, there's nobody who can manage your business except you, and you are the expert in your work and what you do. And that being said, I do outsource social media, and I do have an employee, and also I have accountants and all that stuff. But really, like, running my business, making the decisions, there's no one else that can possibly do that. And I think that's probably true for all artists. That's just, it's so specific to your practice and what you do. Yeah. What else did you ask? I'm sorry.
No, that's what I asked. How do you manage your work, and you're outsourcing it, which is great, because I think many artists, in my experience, I've been in this business across disciplines 40 years. So I've seen a lot of different styles of artists, but often many artists don't think about the very steps that you just mentioned, Aaron and TL and Mark, about outsourcing, about having someone else help you do the work. One thing I've noticed with many artists is that they're reluctant to ask for help. Thinking, if I write a grant, then I'm really trying to ask for someone to give me something. Or if I get awarded funds from a private funder who wants to support me, I feel as if I'm not doing the work on my own. So it's often it's an individual experience of trying to push past getting over yourself to get others to help you do the work that you do. Which brings me to this question. In 2020, with the pandemic and all that you guys have faced, what was that one aha moment that you had? Franz Johansson writes a book called The Medici Effect, which is about the crossing of intersections of ideas that trigger that aha moment. Did any of you three have an aha moment in 2020 where you said, whoa, this is what I need to do? Anyone?
I'll go. I guess 2020, I don't know that it was necessarily any particular thing so much as kind of the shared collective trauma of existing in a pandemic. But my aha moment, which is something that a lot of millennials, but also a lot of new artists or new people that want to do this as a career, the dreaded imposter syndrome is a very real thing. And one of the things that happened towards the end of the year was kind of realizing oh, I really know what I'm doing and it's okay. I don't need to kind of hang on to all of this self-doubt about my business and stuff. I managed to make it through this pandemic ahead, and a lot of that is because of like me feeling more like a veteran now than I did, last year, so I think having that kind of aha, like, oh, I can do this. Like, I just need to communicate with people. I just need to not be so nervous about asking for help or about making new connections with like organizations that I really admire, that before maybe I would have been like, I'm just a nobody. I can't email them and see if they want to collaborate on something. Now I do it really like unabashedly, and I get like really good responses from like really cool illustrators and stuff from around the world or whatever, and like that's such a good reminder that we're all just working our butts off, we're all just wanting to like share our work and be seen by others and have a community. Like, again, I that wasn't my intended theme for all of my little discussions, but community is, I guess, one of the main aha moments for my 2020.
And validation, being validated by others, really, engaging and encouraging. What about you, Mark or Aaron? Did you have an aha moment in 2020?
Mine came in March when, everything dried up. It went down to zero, and it was like, whoa, I'm not going to survive this unless my net goes out much farther than the traditional Dane County and a little bit in Wisconsin. And I don't know if I found this on myself, by myself, or somebody pointed it out to me, but there was a website, cafe, call for entry. And this was like, oh, that's exactly what I need. It's cafe.org or callforentry.org. And on a weekly basis, I probably get, I don't know, 40, 50 folks that are looking for art, galleries, calls for art. Many of them are not suitable for me, but a bunch are. And, I've spent a lot of energy reaching out, getting a wider audience, shows in Palm Springs. I would never be in Palm Springs without that, or Pennsylvania. Now, I'll also say that it's been a learning experience, because for every one that I've been accepted into, probably 2 or 3 rejected me. So you get a little tougher skin, you get it smarter, you learn more about how the art business works from a gallery standpoint. And, those are helpful things to be able to have in your belt. Also, and this was totally unexpected, there were also many more opportunities in Wisconsin that I simply was not aware of. And that's been helpful, because many of those were brick and mortar, and they were within a couple hours drive, Milwaukee, Green Bay, Minneapolis. And so that eliminated the multi-$100 shipping fees. And so that, suddenly, yes, we're in the middle of a pandemic, but here are 5 opportunities or 10 opportunities that are absolutely worth pursuing. So that was my kind of change of business plan, aha moment to keep pushing forward.
Success is shown in the Facebook posts that I've seen you in the sales of your work and the exhibitions that you've been attending. So that's great. What about you, Aaron? Did you have an aha moment, or every day is an aha for you?
Yeah, I mean, fake it till you make it, right? That's what TL was saying. So I resonate with that whole thing too. And it really is just throw it at the wall and see what sticks, and just keep trying and failing and then succeeding and just doing it over and over again. The pandemic, besides all the worry and stress and other anxieties that came with that, I got to spend so much more time with my kid. I mean, she was at home all the time. It was really kind of great. I loved it. It was more chilled out in some ways. I was having like just a little slower pace of life, and my garden looked amazing. I had, I was able to dig into some things in my work that I hadn't before. That I've always really like, my work is really hard. It's like a soulful practice, right? Like I'm trying to get in deep and really express the important things that I want to put out there and feel and show people, right? And so I think that I was able to kind of dig in like that a little bit during this time, and like just stretch some areas of my work that I had already I'd already started this, but this was like, it gave me a more mental, spiritual, emotional space to work in.
Yeah.
So that was a positive, definitely. And kind of like the silver lining or the unexpected positive. I don't think anyone was looking for that, when COVID hit.
Yeah.
But that's one of the ahas for me. Kind of really, I guess, just digging into personal, authentic self and expression,
That's so important. Oh my gosh. That's also work, is what my therapist would say. Taking time off is a part of work. So
hey man, if to be a successful artist, it's, Mark, like what you said, man, you take a lot of hits and you got to have a thick skin. And really, honestly, this is one of the most self-indulgent type, or not self-indulgent, but like, what am I trying to say? It's like self-focused, right? So we make our work, it's all about me, and so it's kind of important to have a healthy, balanced perspective, and so doing like personal work, I think, is actually really critical to running a healthy business as well, an art business, probably other businesses too, but I'm just speaking for myself.
yeah.
I've lived in this house for almost 30 years. And this was the first summer that I realized that the garden hosts a bunch of hummingbirds. Who knew? I was busy. And the pandemic, this was the best therapy in the world, is to sit out there with a camera and a long lens for hours and hours and hours of time, just watching nature, thinking about art, not making it, thinking about it, and occasionally firing the camera to see if you can catch a shot of a hummingbird. Best therapy in the world. And I think I'm a better artist because it wasn't 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours sitting in my studio on my computer, on my phone. The 90% of the time you do the business of art versus the 10% of actually making art. And so to get a break from that is critical.
Well, those are great observations, because as artists, and as hard as you all work, and as much as you need to work to succeed in your work, I wanted to ask that moment. The pandemic forced you into those kind of realignments of your strategies and taking care of yourself. But when you are blocked creatively, when you hear all that noise, and outside of the pandemic itself, and you mentioned a few things that you've done because of the pandemic, how do you move through being blocked creatively, or hearing so much noise? Do you isolate yourself? Do you exercise? What do you each of you do to move through that blocked creativity?
For me, the pandemic had a couple surprises. One is, you weren't supposed to travel. So, I, by and large, am motivated, like Aaron, working with nature. And so I continued to do that. I actually had a pretty productive year in terms of creating art. And one of the things was, there was no one else out there. You'd go to places like a state park or wherever. And, oftentimes I can't have people walking around in my shot. Well, suddenly that went away. And where maybe I'd have to rush in the past, I'd have all the place to myself and all the time in the world. And that was That was wonderful. I had a show up in Minneapolis and decided after I dropped the work off I just grabbed a map and I said, where should I go? I've got 2 days to kill. I had a hotel reservation and followed the St. Croix River. And I didn't have a boat. So because it's a federal protected waterway, there are just oodles of places where you can put a boat in. So there's parking lots, there's access to the water, and spent, 2 days looking at slow moving water and the trees and the birds and all of that, and ended up with some pretty good stuff. But perhaps more than creating the art, it just cleared your head enormously. So for me, it was, don't sit in your office, don't sit in your studio, get out and create. That's what kind of kicked me into high gear.
Aaron, how do you move through your block creativity to that noise that's in your head?
So the way that I do it is I kind of, when you're making work every day, it's so inevitable that you're gonna burn out on work. So I have like a few different tasks that I like to do to get out of that like artist block. So if let's say I have to I need this sketch to be in today. This is the deadline for this sketch, but I have not been in the right headspace to even think about this creatively. What I'll usually do on this needs to happen today is I will do a little bit of admin work, get a little variety of things in your business, so I'll answer some emails, I'll distract myself with other productive work things that is, not, not the actual piece. And while I'm doing that, I can let it kind of percolate a little bit more in the back of my head. I can finish the busy tasks that might distract me while I'm sitting wanting to draw, oh, but maybe I should just answer that email instead. You know what, I'm just going to answer that email. I'm not even going to work on this. My brain will make those leaps to be just actively unhelpful to me. So get eliminating those, these things need to happen now. I'll just do that. And then usually putting on some headphones, getting some really good music going or a good podcast, usually music when it's the sketch phase, but just allow myself to get into a groove and then make mistakes and be okay with going this is gonna be garbage, but this is the first sketch. And then usually, because I did the work to get the admin stuff out of the way, and because I put myself in a very comfortable position at my desk, I'm sitting at my desk right now, so I usually try to get the lighting right, try to make it be a space that I want to be in, instead of wanting to escape and get outside, because obviously now it's spring, and so I don't want to work, I want to smell flowers, forcing that I want to be at my desk now, I want to actually start working, and then usually it clicks in my brain, and that is one method that I like to share with other artists that are do other stuff for the business. It can be sometimes very stressful to go well, if I just go for a walk, maybe that will heighten the stress of but I'm not doing the work I need to be doing, you can absolutely do that. You can everybody has their own way of doing things, of course, but for the people that get a little too in their head about I need to have this done today, I can't afford to step away, don't step away, do something related, and then jump in.
Yeah, to give yourself some time. I know that with children, you're often allowing them, more children need to have time to just imagine, just sit there and not do anything. And that's part of the process of your work, is to allow yourself and to give yourself permission to not do anything,
Yeah.
So Aaron, did you have an aha moment? Not an aha moment, but a way to release the block creativity that you have, or the noises that you hear in your head?
I agree, with reshifting focus to something else, or taking space. I'm the kind of person who thrives without structure. Like I don't, for me, like, you know, more circular time versus linear time. So if I have deadlines, that's what stresses me out more than anything. Over the years, like when I was a younger guy, and the blocks would come in and I'd be like, oh no, am I not an artist anymore? You know, it was kind of like that freak out, you know. But I've just come to trust the process, which is, I mean, why would anyone expect that they would be performing at peak level 100% of the time? I think that's a cultural thing that we've been fed that is just not accurate to reality, you know? And so, I mean, I'm trying to live, well, more authentically, I guess, to my own natural rhythms, to the rhythms of what's around me. And that's not always, you need to get this done right now, here it is. I mean, if I have a deadline and I really have to get something done, sometimes it's not my best work. It's just the way it is. Move on to the next thing. I'm gonna be making work as long as I'm absolutely possible or physically able to do so. And so to me, it's a continuum. It's like a never-ending process. And I feel like at this age of my life, this stage in my career and everything, I have more trust in that. And it doesn't mean that I don't feel anxious sometimes, or you know, the tension that happens when you feel like, you know, I'm not creating new ideas isn't there. But it's just, I usually more comfortably give myself permission to step away and like you said, Mark, just do nothing. Be, you know, just imagine. And
Well, and I think a lot of that comes from you being experienced artists in your work, is that you've learned enough about your abilities that you need to step back and take a break. You know, a lot of us have partners who would tell us to step back and take a break. And if we don't have that, we have to do that within ourselves. So that's a real blessing to the skill sets, as we say, as an experienced artist, that you've learned to do that. Which takes me to this question.
well, I was going to say, Mark, too, this isn't something that, unfortunately, this is one of those things I think is a real gap in our education. You know, these are the kind of things that, whether it's training in business and you know, like that practical stuff, you know, how to actually manage yourself in the context of creation, you know, making things. Yeah.
Yeah, by you just saying like I gave myself permission to take off was like, that like resonated so hard, of like that's how I talk to myself too, of like, okay, I give myself permission to take the day off so that I can not burn out. Like that's important. So yeah, being your own manager is so hard, and we can be so much harder on ourselves than any other like human being that we've ever had as a manager in any other job. Like we are usually our worst bosses.
Yeah. The boss is a jerk.
Yeah, that's I say that all the time. Like, we'll see if the boss lets me take the day off. Like, I got a lot of stuff to do. Anyways, sorry, Mark, go on.
Society almost makes it a badge of honor, you know, that if you work morning, noon, and night, and you answer every email, and you know, take on more and more and more and more, that somehow you're better than the bums that scuff off. Yeah. And
these are good.
Boy, you know, that's it's just a recipe for burnout. And if you're a creative person, burnout is a serious issue, and you know, it doesn't end well. So the notion, as you say, to give yourself a permission to take the day off is critical.
Yeah.
Well, and we've learned in the pandemic through a lot of the research that routine is pretty specific to helping you manage your day when we're all isolated in the pandemic. And I particularly, as a Capricorn male brain, where everything's a straight line, we either eat you or you get out of the way, you know, we're very direct. I know for me, I have to have a routine, and the pandemic has allowed me to really have a structured routine I do this in the morning. I do this every day at noon. I do this every day at 1:30. I do this every day at 3:30, only because it helps me stay sane in this pandemic. So what is your process now in terms of your day? Can you, each of you just quickly describe your day as an artist and the work that you do? You know, Aaron, Mark, TL?
My day's just full of, we'll see what happens today. I feel like I feel like I have zero structure because I have a million different projects, and so it is kind of like, you know, whatever's in line, you know, there's always deadlines. So for me anyway, so it's always just like, okay, well, this commission's due at the end of the week, so it's time to do this one.
So as Aaron said, structured chaos, you know, I think that's
Yeah.
important. We call it chaos, but it's structured in a way.
Yeah.
You know, so Mark or Aaron, do you have a particular routine?
Boy, now that you forced me to say it, I'm kind of embarrassed. I am at the computer just about all day, looking for opportunities, following up with contacts. I start the day with social media. I post every single day. I found this snazzy little app called ARTS Room, or Art Rooms. I forget, Rooms, I guess. And you take your images, and it's as if you're hanging them on someone else's living room wall or their bedroom wall. And at first I just thought it was a nice diversion. I'm stunned by how much activity has been generated by that. So that's how I start my day. And then I have a list of deadlines. And the nature of my business is not a daily deadline, but I know, you know, something's come up, or there's something looming, and that will get probably the most attention. And you know, I'm kind of panicking. I looked today, and I've got something due on the 17th, and then I realized I've got this today, and then tomorrow I'm going to be in Chicago, and then the next day I'm going to be in Racine.
Tell us your whole schedule, Mark. What's your whole week like?
Oh, it's just,
I'm just teasing you.
and anyway, and then so my point is to meet this deadline for Saturday. When I'm done with this meeting, dinner is going to consist of a bag of popcorn, and then I will get this project out the door tonight, probably around midnight, and then I'll be up at 5 tomorrow to drive to Chicago. So, yeah. And so you know, but if you are going to be a successful artist, you have to put in the time and the energy, both the creative and the business side. All these meetings are business. So,
Similar, Aaron, do you have any structure to Capricorn brain like me that's totally structured routine every day?
Yeah, see, I'm kind of the opposite of you. If I had a structure, I would it would just feel so overwhelmingly stifling to my life, you know. But the other part of that is that apparently I have a lot of internal motivation, so it's like I'm always ready to go, but it just I need to feel more like I'm in a flow with it. And you know, in some weeks I'm like high production, some weeks I'm not, some weeks I'm more devoted to the business stuff and the computer work, and you know, it's kind of like organic that way. The only structure I had this winter was every Wednesday, my daughter's asynchronous school day, we would go skiing all day. It was just like
Aw.
the best ever, man. It was so awesome.
I have to say that there's, Aaron, I think you're right. The notion of pursuing creative work is in and of itself, I think, such a noble gift that artists have. If I don't make another dime from art, as you said earlier, Aaron, I will continue to make art until I can't anymore. It's just something that's in your DNA. You get up in the morning, and yes, you've got these routines, but it's fueled by the notion that I get to do something creative. It feeds that such a fundamental need. And, you know, that may be self-serving, as you said earlier, Aaron. I don't know, but I can't do anything other than what I'm doing.
Well, that's a fine line, because I work with a lot of artists who I know if they don't get funded with a project, they're going to do it anyway because they want to, they have to. I understand that, but I often say, I never negotiate with my plumber. It's a cost. When he comes to my house, there's no negotiating with an electrician. This is what it's going to cost. But with artists, it's hard to get them to say, okay, maybe you can't create that work today because you're not going to get paid. But it is a fine line between being so passionate that you've got to create work, and that's going to be every day of your lives, that you need to find a way, and you guys have figured that out, how to succeed and make some dollars from it. So that's really been exceptional, and why I was glad to have the three of you on today. I want to make sure we leave some time for questions. If there are any questions from any of the observers that would like to ask any of the three artists a question about the work that they're doing, or our next steps, process. For example, have you ever heard from an artist who says, a colleague, I just can't sell my work? You know, how do you sell your work? You know, so I see there may be a question in the booth from someone. Sarah, do we have you here to see if there are any questions? I can't see my
I'm
screen.
here. There are no questions yet, but if anybody wants to type them in the chat, you're more than welcome to do so, or you can go ahead and unmute and ask yourself. So whichever you prefer. And when there are any questions, Mark, I will interrupt and let you know.
Great. So how do you respond to a colleague who says, I can't sell my work? How do you sell your work?
Keep trying. I feel like I hear that a lot from other artists that are starting out, that are like, but it's just not happening. It's not working anymore. And there's so many reasons why you might be having issues selling your work. It might be you're talking to the wrong audience. It might be that your work isn't as finished as maybe it could be for sales, or you're not taking good enough photos of it so people aren't able to see, you know, like there's so many different aspects for why something might not be selling as well. And it's usually just networking and, you know, just cleaning up things, looking at other businesses and seeing how they're selling, you know, using other people for comparison is kind of how I started. And yeah, so it's a lot of work. If it doesn't happen immediately, it's not just that other people don't see your talent or that you're not talented, you know, like there are a lot of reasons why that might be.
Great. So just keep on it, keep working at it, finding that niche. Mark, Aaron, any comments from anybody you've known that has said that to you?
You know, I think it's a mindset, and I don't want to have you think I'm avoiding the question, but you have to have a fundamental truth in your heart. And that is, if you don't believe in yourself, you can't expect anyone else to believe in you. And so I think in terms of selling, that's where it starts. And I think buyers can sniff through that very quickly. If you don't have the confidence, why should they buy your art? You don't think it's any good. I'm moving on, you know, period.
Awesome. So there is a question in the chat. It is, what is the best way to start seeking commissions?
Aaron, did you want to start with that one since you didn't get to answer the last question?
Sure. I'm just kind of giving that a second. I guess.
Sorry, I didn't mean to pressure you.
No, that's fine. I guess in dovetailing into with what Mark just commented on. I mean, you really do have to have a very positive mindset and be willing to accept a lot of risk and also failure. For me in my business, I just went and tried a lot of different things, and then certain things started to take form. So it's like kind of hard to give specific advice because all of our practices are different, and it's really going to be completely different for everyone. I did take, I'll put this out there too. I got some basic business training along the way, which I think is really valuable. Unless you already have a business background, but for me, I didn't have that. So, like running my own business, it was really just the basics of that. I really love doing commissions personally. I mean, it's a interaction, a communication, a very collaborative type of work. If you've never done a commission before, maybe I'm just sort of spitballing here, but maybe like, do a commission for somebody and practice the process and see if you really like it. For me, it really resonates, but it might not be for everyone.
Well, you made a great point that you can't answer that question because you're also different in your approach to your work. It's a great response to someone who asks you, how do you sell your work? It's, well, we're all different. You have to find that approach that works for you. So that's great. That's great insight. Any other comments? Go ahead, TL.
Oh, I was just going to say, not to totally just self advertise for a second, but I did a workshop with DABL that is available on their website and their YouTube about Commissions 101 and the best practices for seeking out new clients. And because there are so many avenues that you can go down into gaining clientele and gaining paid work. And my number one thing would be to definitely not just take stuff for free, because that is not like a free, like, I'll just do that thing for free. That is not a commission, that is a gift. But yeah, there are so many things that you can do. You can do mailing lists, you can start with friends and then they tell friends, you can do social media posts about certain pieces that maybe you do that you're like, I would love to do more of this for people. That's how I get a lot of my commissions. You can do cold calls with businesses. Like there's so many things to do that it's really fun. It's when you realize that, like, oh, you can just do so many different like avenues for this, like commission, like gaining commissions becomes a lot less scary. Like that is the least scary part of my business, is commission work.
Well, and you're right. We do have the past DABL presentations online at dablmarket.com, which you did do in 2020 for us. So thank you for letting everybody know that. Please go back to dabble.com, look at some of the past presentations that are done. This year we added presentations and panel workshops like this one tonight. We've done individuals. We've added some music interludes between our sessions as well. So please visit dabblemarket.com. We are near the end of our time. I'd like to stay mindful of, because I'm a Capricorn brain, early is on time for me in everything I do. So we're a little bit early before 7, or if there are no more questions, and I don't know, Sarah, if there are.
No more questions in the chat. But again, if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat, or you could unmute. We probably have time for one more, Mark?
Sure, and please go to Aaron's website, go to Mark's website, TL's website, and look at their work. And I'm sure all three of you are available at any time. I can't speak for you all, of course, but if any of the participants would like to reach out to some of you, the three of you, please, I encourage you to do so. Can I say that, Aaron, Mark, TL?
I just put my email in the chat if anybody has any questions about clientele stuff and about that sort of thing. I'm always open to talk about that kind of thing.
Yeah, me as well. I'm definitely up to share whatever I can.
As well, I'm a talker, so call me on the phone. That's probably the best for me.
Thank you three so much for your time. I'm appreciative of that. Remember, DABL is going to have their art market on November 6th, Saturday at Garver Feed Mill. And stay tuned for a major announcement next week from the county. You may recall that we had COVID and we're still in the middle of a pandemic. And in 2020, Dane Arts was recipient of $100,000 after we petitioned the county to provide funds to individual artists. We were able to provide $500 to 250 artists just to help them through the pandemic. And I'm letting you know now, this will come out next week, that Dane Arts is the recipient of $1 million from COVID funds to support individual working artists. So the application is going to be similar to the DANG application that we did in 2020, a one-pager. Prove that you're an artist, that you're an independent working artist, that you have a history of work over the past couple of years, and that maybe you have a website you can offer us. But it's going to be a very simple process. $1 million, $2,500 to 400 individual working artists in Dane County. And I encourage you to apply as soon as it becomes public, because the money is going to go as quickly as we can get it out the door. But 400 independent working artists, $2,500 each to use as you see fit to support your work. So give it out to the county executive and then Dane County Board of Supervisors for recognizing Dane Arts in this pandemic to support all of you. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Our next one is April 30th with 3 new CEOs of major arts organizations. Christine Boomgart, who is the new executive director of the Madison Museum of Contemporary Arts from Houston. She'll be joining us. Joe Linus, who is the new executive director of the Wisconsin Chamber Orchestra. And we'll also have Brenda DeVita, who's the artistic director of American Players Theater, with musical guest Beth Killey. That's April 30th, 12 noon, here on Zoom. We hope you can join us, but we'll continue this work to help all of you